Right. In this second group of videos on LaTeX, we're going to look at the main environments that you will use. So let's share the screen and come to my website, which I remind you is up there. That's the address, and then go to environments. Okay, these environments are logical structures to work with. Use these logic structures. And as we've already seen, an environment is established by a pair of begin-end statements surrounding the stuff that you want in the environment. That's the three dots. And the name of the environment is included in that, those braces. So we're going to start by looking at a couple of simple examples that you may want from time to time. Quotation and verse. So you want to quote something. You may choose to use the quote environment, and in particular when it's a long enough quotation. If it's a short quotation, you just use the 66.99 quote marks and do it in text. All right, you only use those quote marks for short quotes in the text. If it's a long quote, multiple lines, put it within begin quote, end quote, and the quote goes in the middle. Similarly, for a passage or a verse that can be typeset. It's typeset by the verse environment, and you just say begin verse, end verse with the three dots to be the verse. And the point about this is that you do not have to know how to typeset the quote and the verse. LaTeX knows. You just tell it the logic. So let's have a look at the example that's in the example fractals. Okay, so the example document has a quote right at the very start. So let's typeset it using the quote environment. And I've just highlighted that. Begin quote, end quote, surrounding. Good science is the ability to look at, etc., etc., etc. And usually we attribute a quote at the end, and just to distinguish the author, I've put it in EMF, namely Hans Kornberg. So typeset that, and let's see what it looks like. And you can see it here. Right. Here's the quote. Good science is the ability to look at things in a new way. Universe hangs together, wonderful feeling, Hans Kornberg. And you see what LaTeX has done? It knows that quotes should be indented both on the left and the right. And they should be separated above and below by a little bit of extra space. You don't have to know that, it just comes for free. What about a verse? Okay, we did have a verse in the document, a little ditty by Lewis Fry Richardson. So let's move to it. And one of the things you should look for in your editor is the shortcuts to move between the PDF and the LaTeX. I'll illustrate it now. By command clicking at this point in the display PDF, the editor will automatically switch to that point in the source document. And that is really helpful when you're editing. Right, so, and it works backwards as well. So I suppose I'm up here writing stuff at the end of the introduction. If I command click there, it'll take me into the document to the corresponding place. All right, but we wanted the verse. So let's command click back on the verse. And how do we typeset it? So there's the verse. You're just surrounded by begin verse, end verse, and it gets typeset with the extra constraint that a bit of poetry, Generally, you want to force line breaks into a specific spot. So this is one place that you're allowed to force line breaks with the double backslash character. So inside the verse, you can do this. You can do it lots of places, but if I ever find out you're doing it in bad places, I'll tell you off. This is allowed. Okay, now what happens when the verse is typeset? Again, there's a little bit of white space above and below, and it's indented in from the left. And all this is done for you. Now, one thing to note, while I've got this page up, is the author, Lewis Fry Richardson. I've just included his initials here, LF, and I've put a tilde sign in the middle. This is to make a non-breaking space, right? That is, LaTeX will never have L at the end of a line and F at the start of the line. It'll always group L and F together. We have to do this from time to time in LaTeX. LaTeX knows a lot about punctuation and spacing, but not everything. And so from time to time, we have to tell it when to not break a space. And this is one scenario. Do we have more? I've forgotten whether I've got more in here. No, that's it here. Okay, so let's now discuss that. Those non-breaking spaces are known as ties. Right, and as I've got in the document, sometimes you've got to tell LaTeX that some full stops are not the end of a sentence because it will leave a bit of extra space there. Sometimes you've got to tell it not to break lines, as in LF. The tilde does two things. It's a standard width space and never's breaking. Now, the most likely place that you'll need to do this is in other circumstances, such as referring to figures. You'll go figure, non-breaking space 2, and that's to ensure that you don't have a figure at the end of the line and a 2 at the start of the line, because that is terrible typesetting. Similar for equation 3 and section 3.1. You do not want those spaces to be broken. You must make it a habit to use such ties. It's not something that you put in afterwards, you just do it automatically. And Donald Knuth, many years ago, published an article which discussed many typesetting things, and in particular, ties. And I've extracted out of it more or less his advice about where you need to use ties in LaTeX. Non-breaking spaces. So, scenarios like this: Theorem A, Algorithm B, Chapter 3, Table 4, Programs E and F. Right, in this last one, you don't need a tie between programs and E, but you do between and F. Similarly in names, as we've seen for Lewis Fry Richardson. Also, when we need to tie mathematical symbols to the name, the English name of those. So when we're referring to a base B, a dimension D, a function f of x, a string s of length L, right? Tie that mathematics with a non-breaking space. So, and the other case, there's a bit more of maths there. The other case to remember is when you're enumerating cases in the body of a text. So if you've got A something, B something, following the A and the B, you want a tie. B, tie, show that F is 1, tie, continuous, 2, tie, bounded. Right. So that's the end of this first section on environments, and we'll proceed on to a couple more that you'll also use quite a lot.